The town of Pamelia's finances criticized by the New York State Comptroller's office. The state says based on records, the supervisor didn't record dates that cash receipts were collected and entered into accounts, and that increases the risk of lost, stolen, or misappropriated money. The state also says the town board failed to do an annual audit of the supervisor's financial records. As the town makes corrections, Supervisor Scott Allen says the board wants to emphasize that the town of Pamelia fully embraces the Comptroller's recommendations and remains firmly committed to transparency, sound accounting, and responsible fiscal management on behalf of the community.